Hi, welcome to Modern Analytics Academy Vineyards. My name is Pradeep Singla. I'm a cloud solution architect with the global partner solution team of Microsoft. If you're not familiar with Modern Analytics Academy, please definitely visit aka.ms/MAA. The main reason to give all these sessions to help our partners to know about the new features and how to use them and answer their frequently asked questions we receive from them and also updates to previous sessions which we covered. Let's jump into the today's topic. Today we're going to talk about solution accelerators for data analytics on Azure. The main reason for giving this vignette is to help our partners to build their solution fast on the data analytics. The solution accelerator we're going to discuss today handles most of the use cases related to ETL pipeline. So in today's topic, I will talk about what is solution accelerators, and then we will go into detail of end-to-end Synapse solution accelerator. Then I will give you a demo of it. So solution accelerators are open source project hosted on GitHub, holding repositories of resources and information that simplify and accelerate problem solving through the implementation of technology. We produce these solution accelerators by identifying and developing best practices and other IP from real world engagement with our partners and customers. We test each of these solution accelerators with our field and partners and fine tune them prior to general availability. If we look from the data mesh perspective, each solution accelerator is a data product. It could be like a recommendation engine or a demand forecasting solution. Each solution accelerator is an end-to-end solution that contains code, notebooks, and pipelines. Customers can use these solution accelerators to quickly build their data products and realize the data value. As I mentioned, today we're going to discuss about end-to-end Synapse Solution Accelerator. And if you see, this is the reference architecture on which the solution accelerator build on. So this deployment accelerators aims to automate not only the deployment of the services covered by the reference architecture, but also to fully automate the configurations and permissions required for the services to work together. Very basic things are like link services, manage identities to access another services from one service, right? So the deployment accelerators enables the end-to-end analytics platform capable of handling the most common use cases for most of the organizations. The implementation of this solution accelerator is done through the use of Azure Biceps, a domain-specific language that uses a declarative syntax to deploy Azure resources. These deployment accelerators give you the option to implement the entire reference architecture or uh, choose what workloads you need for your analytical use case. I will go into more detail like what are different services you can deploy. You also have the option to select whether services are accessible via public endpoints or if they are to be accessed only by a private endpoints. This deployment accelerator helps you to explain like how to use Azure Synapse Analytics with the extensive family of other Azure data services to build a modern data platform that capable of handling the most common data challenges for any organization. The analytical use cases covered by the architectures are illustrated by the different data sources on the left side of this reference architecture. I won't go through all the sources like into detail one by one, but let's take the example of relational databases and see how we can go through the whole ETL pipeline by handling all most of the use cases if your source is relational database. So if your source is relational database and during the ingestion stage, you can use Azure Synapse pipeline to pull the data from wide variety of databases, both on premise and in the cloud. And pipelines can be triggered based on
predefined schedule in response to an event, or it can be explicitly called by REST APIs. Now, then the next stage come is the store, right? In the store stage, within the raw data lake layer, organize your data lake following the best practices around which layers to create, what folder structure to use in each layer, and what file format to use for each analytical scenario. From the Azure Synapse pipeline, you can use the copy data activity to stage the data copied from relational data into the raw layer of your ADLS Gen 2 data lake. And you can save the data in the delimited text format or compressed as like a Parquet format. Then the next stage come is the process stage, and during the process stage you either use either data flows, SQL Server queries, or Spark notebooks to validate, transform, and move the data sets from the raw layer through the enriched layer and into your curated layer in your data lake. As part of your data transformation, you can also invoke machine learning models from your SQL pools using a standard like T-SQL or Spark Notebook. These ML models can be used to enrich your data sets and generate further business insights. These machine learning models can be consumed from Azure Cognitive Services or custom ML models from Azure ML. Then the next stage comes is the serving layer, right? In the serving layer, you can serve your final data set directly from the data lake curated layer, or you can copy and use a again Synapse pipeline copy that activity to ingest the final data set into your SQL pool tables using the copy command for fast integration. Then the next stage come as like the serve layer, right? So you can serve your final data set directly from the uh, data lake created layer, or you can use copy data activity to ingest the final data set into your dedicated SQL pool using the copy command for fast ingestion. Load relevant data from Azure Synapse SQL pool or data lake into Power BI data sets for the data visualization. Power BI models implement a semantic model to simplify the analysis of business data and relationship. And analysts use Power BI reports and dashboard to analyze data and drive business insights. Data can also be securely shared to other businesses using the Azure Data Share mm, but like service. Data consumers have the freedom to choose what data format they want to use and what compute engine is best to process the shared data sets. Structured and unstructured data in your Synapse workspace can also be used to build knowledge mining solutions and use AI to uncover valuable business insights across different document types and formats, including from Office documents, PDF, images, audio, and web pages. Let's look at some of the potential use cases for using this deployment accelerator. One use case is like establish a data product architecture, which consists of a data warehouse for structured data and a data lake for a semi-structured and unstructured data. Now, very common lakehouse architecture is like a delta lakehouse architecture. Um, you can deploy using this deployment accelerator. Data Lake is like an open source storage layers that bring ACID transactions to Apache Spark and big data workloads. And you can also choose to deploy a single data product for centralized environment or multiple data product for distributed environment like data mesh technologies. Um, Other use case could be integrate relational data sources with other unstructured data sets with the use of big data processing technologies. As I mentioned, the Delta Lake house architecture. And another one is like use semantic modeling and powerful visualization tool for simpler data analysis. And another one is like share data sets with the organization or with the trusted external partner using Azure Data Share Service. And then using Azure machine learning and cognitive services, you can implement knowledge mining solution to extract valuable business information hidden in like images, PDF, documents, and web content, so on. So now let's look at the potential use cases for the partners. Partners can definitely use this solution accelerator for giving the demo to their customers about like how all these data analytics services work together. And if you look at the GitHub link on the reference slide, I will show you. It has all the scripts which were written to deploy the solution accelerators, and partners can always customize those scripts according to their need and can add their in their existing solution. And from the implementation, from the security and compliance perspective, this solution accelerator has a very well detailed information. What are the RBAC permissions you need, and if you want to deploy it in your private network, what are the things you need to do. ISP partners can definitely implement those things in their products. And end of the day, you can always this solution accelerator for the proof of concept. So these are the some reference links I will definitely recommend you to go through. These links will provide you step-by-step instructions that how to use this solution accelerators and how you can deploy it. Now jump to the interesting part of this session, which is demo. Before I show you the demo, I just want to go through the scope of this solution accelerator deployment. The Azure services used in this architecture, in this diagram, have been divided into different workloads that can be conditionally deployed based on the input parameters. Only the by default services which will be deployed is Azure Synapse Analytics. As you can see here, only the services under this green box will be deployed mandatory. All other services up to the partner or customer use case, if they are really handling the real time or IoT data, they can deploy these services in the green box. Similarly, if they want to run a machine learning on their data, they can deploy the services under this yellow box. And similarly, if they want to share the data with other third party customers or organization, they can deploy the services under this orange box. And then if they want to handle the Azure data governance, then they can use the Azure Purview service. Um, and The default pricing tier for all services are provisioned, are there like lowest possible to meet the initial deployment requirements. And also, if explicit names are not provided, all services name will be appended with the 5 letters fix to ensure name uniqueness in Azure. Now, the other things like you have to really care about, like all services are deployed in a single resource group, and in the same region as the resource group. Before creating the resource group that will host the workload, check the Azure products by region and select the region that has all the selected services available. Make sure that before you hit the deployment button of the solution accelerators, all these providers are already registered in your subscription. If you will select any other region which is not listed here, um, um, they are supported for partial deployment. The deployment will fail if any of the service selected is not available in the chosen Azure region. As I mentioned before, beyond the deployment of the services that make up this reference architecture, this template also automates the configuration of connections and permission between the services in order for them to work properly. Every arrow you see in this diagram um, represents a configuration step that has been automated for you, saving a lot of time to get to business insights. Every connection and permission you see in this diagram has been implemented following the technical documentation, which you can see in the GitHub documentation I have shared in the reference links. Beyond the services connection like created in this diagram, the deployment all accelerator template also define Azure RBAC permissions between the services. These are the minimum level of permissions granted to their system assigned managed entity for the integration to function properly. And if you want to get a better idea for what type of permissions are provided, again, please definitely look at that GitHub link, which I have shared in the reference documentation. It has all the technical documentation for each of these RBAC permissions. As I mentioned before, that you can deploy this solution accelerator either in the public environment, or if you want to deploy it in the private environment, this deployment accelerator provide you that functionality too. If you are planning to deploy it in the VNet integrated environment, the Synapse workspace will be deployed with the managed virtual networks. Public access will be disabled, and firewall rules will be set to restrict connectivity to and from the virtual networks and between the services in the architecture. And private DNS zones required by the different private link domains can be optionally deployed and linked to the selected virtual network. So this is the GitHub link I was talking about, which I shared in the reference links. It has a step-by-step instruction that how to deploy the solution accelerators. So there are two ways you can deploy the solution accelerator, either using on that using the Azure Portal. Just click on this deploy button, and then it will ask you what are all different services you want to deploy, or you can use Azure CLI. There are different commands are provided here to deploy the solution accelerators, either. So if you want to deploy using public endpoints, or you want to deploy using VNet integrated environments. So let's deploy the solution accelerators using the Azure portal. Just click on this button. It's gonna ask you like what subscription under which you want to create the resource group and you want to deploy all these services, and then you can provide the resource group name. So here I'm providing test and in which region you want to deploy it, and then it will ask you whether you want to deploy in the public endpoints or you want to use a uh, private network. So right now I'm using this public endpoint. Then it will gonna ask you for the Azure Synapse Analytics whether you want to create a dedicated SQL pool uh, and Spark pool, as well as Azure Data Explorer pool. Uh, then it's gonna ask you the username and password for the Synapse SQL admins. So I'm just providing that. Then it's gonna ask you what other different services you want to deploy based on your use case. If you want to take care of the data governance, you can deploy Azure Purview. Similarly, if you want to use AI services like cognitive services or machine learning, yeah, you can deploy those services. Right now, I'm not deploying these services. And then if you are handling the IoT uh, or real-time data workload, you can deploy those services. Similarly, if you want to share the data with third-party vendors, you can deploy Azure Data Share. And then I'm going to ask you whether you want to deploy Cosmos DB or like operational databases or not. So right now I'm not deploying all these services except Azure Purview. Um, so now we are deploying on all the services in the public endpoint. So that's why it didn't ask me anything. But if you go back, if I select here VNet integrated environments, it's gonna ask me like provide the virtual network and the subnet and the DNS zone if you want to deploy that or not. It's gonna ask you all that requirements. So uh, then I'm gonna ask you whether you want to deploy the sample artifacts on the Synapse Analytical and all other services which you're deploying. Some base sample SQL scripts or data sets will be deployed for you to uh, test the functionality. So yeah, that's all what you have to provide, and then just click on review and create. It will validate whatever the configurations you have provided. So validation has passed, then just click on the create button. Then all the services will be deployed automatically. So if I go back to my Azure portal, you can see the test resource group has been created, and the storage account, Synapse Workspace, and the Microsoft Purview services have been created. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share with you all today. Very much for listening this session today. This is all I want what I wanted to share. If you want to listen any other previous recorded session, please definitely visit aka.ms/ma. Thank you very much.